Hey, welcome back to the stash.
At long last, after 30 years, we finally have got the continuation of the legendary show Spider-Man the Animated Series. Now, I think it's safe to say that that show is a timeless classic for all Spider-Man fans to enjoy. I certainly adore it. I used to watch the same 4 DVDs over and over again as a child, and how could I not? I mean, even after 30 years, this series is still just as good as it was when it first came out. It captured so much right about the webhead. It gave us a Peter Parker who struggled, who sacrificed, who carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders but never lost his heart. It was bold enough to adapt some of the biggest comic storylines of the time, yet accessible enough that even a kid could get lost in its world. The show's version of Mary Jane, its Kingpin, its Green Goblin, all became definitive for an entire generation. And even with the restrictions of the 90s television in place, it never shied away from the real drama. But the thing that really cemented its legacy wasn't just the stories it told, it was the ones that it never got to finish. I'm talking about, of course, the cliffhanger that left us dangling for decades, Peter Parker ready to go on an intense search for the love of his life, Mary Jane Watson. It was unfortunately a search that left us hanging in the air with no resolution. That unresolved ending truly turned the show into something mythic. It became a wound in Spider-Man's history that never healed. But here we are today, in 2025, finally holding the supposed answer to all of that in Spider-Man 94 Issue 1, a comic continuation that dares to pick up the torch, to carry on a story that's lived in our imagination for 30 years. But the question is, can it truly recapture the magic? Before we do get into that though, I want to take a quick second to say that here at The Stash, we're trying to reach 17,000 subscribers before the end of the month. Now, it's a huge ask, I know, but with your help, I also know we can do it. So if you like Spidey or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But with all that being said, let's jump right back into the video. Our story begins with the mysterious Kane talking to his maker, Morlun. He swears to Morlun that he'll find the totem Spider-Man, and with that, he's off on his hunt. But speaking of Spidey, he's currently over the moon reunited with the love of his life, Mary Jane Watson. The two then converse until Mary Jane asks Peter the big question, but Peter hesitates. He still had to go through the highs and the lows of being married to MJ's clone, and with that hesitation, causes MJ to storm off. But she doesn't give up on him or them. The next day she goes to Aunt May's place and fights for their love, a fight which proved to be more than successful. And so after the two share a very nice moment, Peter tries to make an effort with Aunt Anna. The dinner goes okay until Kane bursts through the window and kidnaps Peter. It's clear he knows he's Spider-Man, and so soon after they're outside, Spidey finally fights back. Kane though is far too strong for him. It's through sheer luck of their strange connection which causes Kane to forfeit the fight. Back home, Aunt Anna is completely angered by the whole situation. She's back to her normal self, and Mary Jane has finally had enough. She lashes out at her aunt, which causes her to leave. It shocks the whole group, but honestly, it was only a matter of time with how poorly Aunt Anna treats Peter. On Kane's end though, Morlun is very disappointed and very hungry. So he betrays his very own creation and consumes Kane. It's no big deal, however, for Morlun can form another without any trouble. Now, anyone and everyone who cares about the 90s show has definitely thought about how does this series hold up as a continuation for the beloved series. And in my opinion, I think it's a decent start. It's not the best, certainly not the worst, but overall, there's a lot to like. However, there's just a lot of room for improvement as well. The writing all round was pretty good. For the most part, everyone felt like how they should, and that's all you can really ask for. Although sometimes, I thought Peter was written a bit too over the top. I don't really remember him making jokes like that multiple times in a single fight, but that's more so a nitpick from me. I guess my main issue is how it's not really a natural continuation of the series. It completely time skips over the cliffhanger that's plagued our minds for years, and so I really wish that the book would take some time to properly address it at the very least, instead of more so teasing us about it. I understand that with this being a limited series, it would be pretty difficult to cover that and tell a new story, but a part of me thinks that it should have been an actual priority. I'm also hoping that as the series continues, it really starts to recapture the proper essence of the show, because right now, I won't lie, there's a lot of good parts, but To me, this mostly just felt like a random issue of Spectacular Spider-Man from the 90s, especially with Kane being there. Kane was actually pretty odd too. It completely threw me off guard at the start when it was revealed he was Morland's servant. It's a change that I honestly don't care for. It could literally have been anyone, but it feels like he's only here because it's set in the 90s and he's kind of a pillar of the 90s, as opposed to just the story fitting around him. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I was pretty excited to see Kane, especially back in that design, but so far, it hasn't really been doing much for me. Morland though was certainly an interesting choice to have as the main villain. I actually quite like him as a character, but more so in relation to only his first ever story by J. Michael Straczynski. So I like that it's more in line of how he was portrayed there, and I'm really looking forward to see how this Peter handles a threat like him. Said about Vermin though, it is funny how you can always just tell JMD Mateus is writing the issue whenever Vermin shows up, but I mean, he used Vermin, a random character, and turned him into a genuinely compelling staple of his run back in the 90s. JMD once again nails the voices for Peter and Mary Jane. They're pretty perfect here, and I love how well he portrayed them. He's easily one of the best when it comes to that aspect of Spidey comics, so to get that feeling and to read their dynamic by his hand once more in the big 2025 was really special. And honestly, Mary Jane was probably the best character in the issue. She stole every scene she was in, and her snapping at Aunt Anna felt amazing to watch. I swear that woman was the biggest hater in the original show, and I was just glad to see someone finally dish it back out to her again. Peter here though was fine. Like I said before, there were a couple of moments I thought he was written pretty averagely, but overall I guess it was okay. I thought the way that he fought was pretty cool and was certainly a step up from the limitations of the show. I loved him using the web gloves. I thought that was awesome. It's like the coolest thing ever, yet you only see it used in like 3 things max. His design though, I don't know what Marvel's problem is, but modern day Peter, no matter if it's the 616 or a comic meant to be a continuation of a show with a set design, he just looks so unbelievably generic, weak, and ugly. This is not the same person. There's literally no way. It's my biggest annoyance of the book because at times it felt like the artist didn't even try when it came to Peter. Characters like MJ and Aunt May were decent enough, but my god did they do Spidey dirty. Hell, they didn't even get his build right. This was a Spider-Man known for being huge, but here I can barely tell the difference between this and any other look for the character in the last 20 or so years. So, like, that part was a real shame, because I'm sure that there's so many other people who could have done a better job and stayed more true to the show's look. Overall, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's still just pretty poor. At the end of the day though, it's pretty clear that what makes this issue feel special isn't really whether every creative choice lands, it's in fact that it exists at all. For nearly 3 decades, Spider-Man the Animated Series has sat frozen in time, its story left dangling at one of the most infamous cliffhangers in superhero television. Fans carried that weight with them, be it speculating, theorizing, in some cases even creating their own continuations. So, to finally hold a comic in 2025 that bears the name Spider-Man 94 and to flip through the pages where these characters are brought back, it feels cool in that sense. It's just a real shame that the overall execution came up short in quite a few ways. It leans hard into the excitement of nostalgia. It's probably the book's greatest strength, and it proves that the stories we grew up with never really fade. But what's also fascinating is how that this series enters the Marvel landscape that we're currently in. We're in an era obsessed with multiverses, poor editorial choices that ruin the main title, and resurrecting forgotten corners of superhero history. And in that sense, Spider-Man 94 feels both like a bold experiment and a long overdue payoff. And when it comes to the question of can a world originally built for Saturday morning television, complete with its heightened melodrama, censorship limitations, and stylized tone, be transplanted into comics and still feel authentic, I believe issue 1 doesn't quite give a definitive answer, but it sparks the question in a way that can be exciting. Seeing these versions of Peter, MJ, and their world tested against comic-born villains creates an odd but intriguing collision, one that makes you wonder what other forgotten universes could still have life left in them. I mean, X-Men 97 was a massive hit for Marvel. Should they have gone the same route with Spider-Man and done a proper revival with a new show instead of a comic? Honestly, in my opinion, yeah, they should have. I'd even argue that the Spidey series had more of a reason for a continuation than the X-Men show. But anyway, I do like how this comic is really trying to show us the vibrancy of Spider-Man's mythos, from Molten Man to Morlun to Kane to MJ to Spidey himself. No matter the format, no matter the decade, no matter the medium, the core of these characters remain endlessly recognizable and intriguing. I just hope that the creative team takes the spark that's clearly there and nurture it across the rest of the series, because it has potential to grow into something that's more than a novelty. It could become a genuine continuation worthy of the show's legacy. So while the first issue may stumble in places, it still leaves me with hope. Hope that the next chapters dig deeper into what made the animated series so beloved, and hope that it slows down long enough to let its characters breathe, to balance the spectacle with the emotional grounding that's always defined Peter Parker's world. Because if they can manage that, if they can truly capture the heart as well as the history, then Spider-Man 94 might not just scratch an itch we've all carried since childhood, it could finally give us closure, while at the same time proving that Spider-Man the Animated Series still has stories worth telling, decades after we all thought his voice had gone silent.